Hi, this is Dr. MJ coming to you from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. This is the Women in Dentistry podcast, where we feature women in dentistry making waves and leading the industry through the next decade. I am your host, Dr. Mary Jane Hanlon, a former dental assistant, dental hygienist, and now dentist. I am very pleased to introduce you today to Dr. Kathryn Hayes. Dr. Hayes is chair of the Department of Oral Health Policy and Epidemiology and program director of dental public health at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. She's the former dental director of Mass Health, the Massachusetts Medicaid and CHIP program. She's a diplomat and past president of the American Board of Dental Public Health and a past president of the American Association of Public Health Dentistry. She has held leadership positions in academic institutions and national and international organizations. Dr. Hayes has been actively involved in research and policy initiatives related to oral health disparities and inequalities throughout her career. She received her BS in biology from Boston College and her DMD from Tufts University, magna cum laude. She completed a general practice residency at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston and received both master's and doctoral degrees in epidemiology from Harvard University, where she also completed a dental public health residency. She's a certified leadership coach and a certified Enneagram practitioner. It is now my pleasure to bring you to my interview with Dr. Kathryn Hayes. Kathryn, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for taking some time to be with us, and I'm sure the audience is going to appreciate your story so much, just because I know so much about you. I know how many things you've done. It's just a great story. I'd love for you to just jump right in and let us know how you got into the field of dentistry.
Sure. First, thanks for having me, MJ. It's great to see you. And thanks for doing this for Women in Dentistry. So I actually, it's kind of a non-traditional path, I would say. When I was in high school, which was a small, all-girls Catholic high school, I decided I wanted to be a dental hygienist. I really don't know why. I didn't know any hygienists. I didn't know any dentists. But at that time, which was, more than 40 years ago, women in general weren't going into dentistry.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to dental hygiene school, and I right away fell in love with public health. I loved everything that we did public health related. And in my second year of hygiene school, just before I graduated, I was selected to go on a trip to South America, and it was a public health kind of a mission trip. So I was really just kind of blown away by the experience. I grew up and was still living in inner city projects in Boston, but I saw poverty there that I never thought existed. And something inside of me was just like a fire was lit that there's inequities in this world, and somehow I wanted to work towards addressing them. While I was there, I was already accepted into a dental hygiene bachelor's program for public health at Northwestern. But while I was there was also a group of oral surgeons, and they said, "Oh, you really should go into dentistry if you want to make an impact in public health." So here I am, 19 years old, putting myself through school. So I decided to come home. I switched to Boston College, got my bachelor's, and then went to dental school. But dental school for me was still an intermediary to going into public health. So went through dental school at Tufts. I had a great experience, wonderful classmates and professors. And then knowing I was going into public health, I wanted to do a general practice residency to get just more clinical skills. So I did that at the Brigham, where I had a tremendous experience with Steve Sonis and amazing colleagues. And he said to me, "Since you're interested in public health, you should go talk to Dr. Chester Douglas at the dental school. They have a grant for dentists to get training in public health." So I did, and then I decided when I finished that residency to go into a doctoral program in epidemiology at the Harvard School of Public Health, which is what I did. So, and I did my dental public health residency and then became board certified in dental public health. Still not knowing exactly what was next, but thinking likely it would be academics. So I've spent the majority of my career in academics, although I've taken some breaks and done some government work and some of my own consulting. And so the majority of my time in my career has been spent in academics, and that's what I currently do. Is I lead a department called Oral Health Policy and Epidemiology. It's kind of full circle. It's where I trained at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Wow. That's a lot in one fell swoop. Now, tell us a little bit. I know you've had some great leadership roles, so tell us a little bit more about that because I think that's important for the audience to know what else you've done.
I'm also a leadership coach. I took some time away and did some coach training, and because leadership is such an important role, right?
Sure.
And people often get that title, but they don't necessarily have the skills. And it's not
Mhm.
intellectual skills. It's really about people skills. Knowing yourself and knowing how to lead others in a way that nurtures them. So some of the leadership roles that I've had in the past, well, as I mentioned, I currently have a department chair role. I had a department chair role for a new department at Tufts, actually. It was called Public Health and Community Service. So starting a new department was a whole new
Mhm.
challenge, but also very rewarding in the end. I also have been the dental director of the Mass Health Program, which is the Massachusetts State Medicaid and CHIP program, which is a government role. And I was interim director of as the state dental director for Massachusetts Department of Public Health some years ago. So I've had many leadership roles in my career, and I would encourage other women to explore that. And I think sometimes people think, oh, I'm not qualified. And I think women think that more than men. And so I would just encourage the listeners to stretch yourself into that next role where you'll actually be in a leadership role. And that's where you learn so much about yourself.
I couldn't agree more. And I want to add that a lot of us spend too much time thinking they have to have all the checks on the boxes for a role that they have not done before. Well, that's not the case. I think most women shy away from applying for roles that they may think that they're not qualified for, but they have the ability to do.
Absolutely.
So I would encourage everyone to do just as Kathy has done and just put yourself out there so that you can get these roles and find more women in leadership roles in the field of dentistry.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about any challenges that you might have encountered in these leadership roles. Is there any kind of pattern that you've seen across the industries?
Interesting. There's definitely always challenges in leadership roles, both in terms of your tasks and responsibilities, but also in terms of helping others and leading others and managing others. And we often talk about managing up, which is, managing those above you in the hierarchy, and then also managing your team. And I think it certainly have faced challenges. One challenge I faced was kind of dealing with an issue around equity. If you remember, like when I went to South America, there was something that switched in me that, I just started to see the inequities and really wanting to address them, mostly in health, but in this case, it was, something more specific in terms of salaries for women. And so, it's something I spoke up about, and I would encourage people to, it's really important that we kind of own our power, not in a, confrontational way, but stand in our truth and make sure that we advocate for ourselves and advocate for others as well. So I think, and sometimes in doing that, it can be very challenging.
Mhm.
So that's one challenge I faced. I would say when I was Medicaid dental director, one of the challenges was really I met some absolutely amazing dentists who were doing great work for people who have Medicaid as their insurance. But there's also this misperception. And so really working with the provider community, and again, it often comes down to relationships. It's just that connection, building trust, which is a huge part of leadership, listening to the other. I started visiting offices and listening. What are things that we can fix? What are things that aren't working? What are things that are working? And so I think in having those conversations and listening to providers, and even I formed work groups of various providers, one for general anesthesia for kids and another for orthodontics. And I think it's so important as a leader to really learn to listen. And I often say there's a difference between hearing and listening, because
Yes.
we don't just hear the words, we hear also what's not being said. We
Mhm.
notice the nonverbal cues. It's like reading the room, and that's such an important aspect of leadership. And there's leadership opportunities all throughout dentistry, whether you're leading your individual practice or you're leading a group or a department in a school, whatever the case may be. we're called upon to be leaders in so many different aspects of dentistry.
I remember all our conversations across the phone with you being in your role in Mass Health and my being my role at Dean of Clinical Affairs at Tufts, talking about, okay, how can we support our patients better and what else can we do? And even in my role as president of Massachusetts Dental Society, we had a lot of conversations about, okay, how do we get more dentists involved and hygienists and reach out to more patients? It's hard because we aren't getting paid as much as we deserve to be paid, I don't think. But it's also, where's the money going to come from? How's it going to be raised? And is there a way that we can do it better so that more people get services and more dentists feel engaged in giving those services?
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
So tell us one thing that people would be surprised to know about you.
Maybe that I'm a grandmother. I have two granddaughters, one who just turned 6, one who's almost 11.
Wow.
Yeah, and would have to say that's one of the greatest joys of my life, being a grandparent.
Can't say that I don't agree with you. I got to tell you, my little munchkins are my favorite thing to do every week.
I know. It's really, truly a blessing.
So when you reflect back, growing up, did you always have confidence? Because, when I see you talk, when I see you in front giving presentations in front of a room giving presentations, you're always so confident. You have command over the room. You speak extremely well. What contributed to that confidence? Have you always had it, or is it something learned?
That's so interesting because I remember as a kid, I was actually pretty shy and, very quiet, just kind of did what I was supposed to do. But by the time I was in high school, I started to step into leadership roles, like with student council. And I think that came from a desire to really want to be involved and seeing things again, like, oh, I just want to make this a little better. So that was something that's always been part of me. But I also had an experience just as a young kid. One day I had this experience walking to school in first grade. And as I mentioned, I lived in the project. So I was in the city and crossing this pretty major road by myself. And I just had this experience of like, just this kind of thought ran through my body. Don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And it just became a touchstone for me. Like whenever I would feel like anxious about a test or something, I would just, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And I was a good student. I was a very serious student, but I was always involved in extracurricular activities as well. So I think the confidence, and it's funny because I'll remember at the very first time I had to give a talk at a national meeting. I was doing my residency at the Brigham. I was so nervous. I mean, my mouth was so dry. I was like milking my parotid glands to get some saliva. It was really funny. And I really felt the anxious energy throughout my body. And then after I finished, all these people came up and said, "Oh my God, you were so calm." And I'm like, what are they talking about? I was not calm at all. So I think sometimes what appears in front is not always what's going on. I mean, I've developed confidence over the years because I've taught classes for 30 years and made presentations for all those years. And I actually enjoy public speaking, which I know is not the norm. So I think it came with experience and having positive experiences speaking. And so now I just find it actually very enjoyable. But I always say to people, like for me, that touchstone was don't worry, everything's going to be okay. And, that was my inner guidance. And we all have inner guidance. And I think if we can connect to that more than our inner critic that will tell us, you can't do that. You can't open that big practice. You can't get that specialty training. That's our inner critic. And if we learn how to like push that aside, listen to the guide that will always take us in the right direction, that just brings confidence, trust that things are going to work out.
And if you can truly resonate with that, it calms everything down, right?
Exactly.
Instead of being anxious all the time, it calms things down. And just
Right.
what you resist persists. So if you are resisting moving forward and, having anxiety moving forward, that's going to persist. And so if we just calm ourselves down and just let it flow, I think we accomplish so much more.
Totally agree. I often tell my students, because they get anxious taking an exam, I say the most important thing you can be is calm and confident.
Mhm.
So sit quietly, just really feel your feet connected to the floor and start to feel more energy in your body so you're not worrying in your head, and it just calms you down. Just really noticing the support that you have and letting yourself quiet down, and then the wisdom can come through and you can just ace that exam or whatever or job entry, whatever it is.
I use it a lot on patients. I don't know if you know what box breathing is.
No.
So Navy SEALs use it all the time to, of course, they're dealing with critical situations, and I get anxious. I don't know about them, but I would get anxious. So they use box breathing to calm themselves down. And you breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, breathe out for 4, hold it for 4. So it's like a box. You go up, hold, down, hold, and up, hold. And it's just a rhythm. And I find that it really calms patients down before treatment. There are so many patients still to this day, which kind of surprises me when I treat them, that they have anxiety. Because why would you have anxiety at this point in your life? Dentistry has come so far. When I was a kid growing up, I was hit by a dentist. It wasn't an enjoyable situation. It happened because I was crying. I was young. I didn't understand, but he should have understood that my teeth were hurting because he didn't give me Novocaine. He was doing a root canal procedure, and he didn't numb the area, and all my teeth are extremely sensitive. So he should have known better, but he didn't. He just got frustrated and hit me. So I think we can all do better than that.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was a kid, the dentist didn't use Novocaine either, which was amazing to me.
Yeah. I don't think they wanted to spend the money, I think it was a frugality thing, and maybe it was newer to the industry back then and didn't feel like they needed it, but I needed it. So it was unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't think we'd ever see that happening today.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. All right. What's the single best piece of advice you've ever been given by anyone, and who would that person be?
There's been so many wonderful people in my life have given me great advice. I would have to say Helen Santos, our mutual friend, mentor, and she just always said, speak up.
Yeah.
If there's something that's amiss and you need to speak up, speak the truth. Speak the truth. And that is something that I've always done. It's not always easy and it's not always popular.
Right.
But it's important. And
It
I
is
think
important.
the more of us who do it, and you can speak the truth with respect and kindness, it doesn't have to be anything confrontational or negative. But I think that's really been a core value of mine. And, I thank Helen, I thank her for that in so many things. She was a dear friend, a wonderful mentor, and sorely missed. But yeah.
Yeah. That's very good. Who in dentistry inspires you today? Is there anybody that's around now that inspires you?
I'm inspired by, people who are stepping up into leadership roles, especially women who step into these roles and bring other women along with them so that they're really role models like Helen was for us, so that they build people up and then step back and watch them shine.
Yeah.
That is really what I admire in men and women, in dentistry. And that's what I love to see. People who are really, really motivated to help the next generation, come forward. And that's something I love about being in academics. I love mentoring and I love, helping people to really move forward. I think another person who's been a big inspiration in my career is Dr. Steve Sonis. He was my GPR, the director of the service. We just published a paper together a couple of weeks ago. He's just an incredibly intelligent man, an amazing mentor. And I will say the day my son was born, he called me that morning and he said, "Isn't it the most amazing thing you've ever experienced?" He's just a great human being, brilliant scholar, and an amazing mentor.
I got to tell you, he's a legend in Boston. Everybody knows his name. Just a legend. He just has been very instrumental in a lot of people's career in dentistry in this area.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful man. Yeah.
Who do you think has had the biggest impact on your life? Do you think it's the same person? Do you think it's Steve?
Probably professionally, yes, and Helen's definitely had a huge impact.
How about
Um,
personally?
I would say my grandmother. My,
Ah,
yeah, she was also Kathryn Hayes. I was named after her. She was just a remarkable kind of, amazing woman who was able to manage so many, things in the family, but also have her own fun. She
mhm.
had 7 kids and I don't know, 26 maybe grandkids. When she was 75, she took belly dancing lessons. When she was 8, she went whitewater rafting in Banff. I mean, she was just an amazing, energetic. She took me to my first Irish pub down in Hyannis.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
she was just a lot of fun and also very caring and made everyone feel special. She was an amazing person. Yeah.
Very cool. Have you ever had an aha moment when you realized you were doing exactly what you were set on this earth to do?
Mhm. I have. And a lot of times that comes with speaking, doing public speaking, and sometimes even in dentistry and sometimes outside of dentistry. I think what I'm meant to do is to help people see that kind of spark in themselves, like find that spark, find what it is they're meant to do. And not that I give them the answers because it they know the answers. I just help them to uncover everything that's covering up,
Mhm.
and then when you watch them shine, that gives me such joy. I love it.
I still hear from some of my students to this day, and it's
Yeah.
so nice to just see where they're going and what they've accomplished, and knowing that you had a little bit of an impact on them during the time that you were together. Yeah, it speaks volumes. It just
It's
speaks
so
volumes,
true.
and it's just so heartwarming.
It's so true. I know.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah, it's wonderful. We have reunions every year, of course, and I see like I say, the kids, they're not kids anymore, come
Yeah.
back for reunion and, they're just doing so well and they're happy and building their families and their practices. And yeah, it's such a delight.
That's great. So, do you have a guilty pleasure or a secret dream that you'd like to share with the audience?
I don't know if it's a guilty pleasure. Well, I'll tell you, one of my secret dreams is if I ever win the lottery, I would love to start a retreat center for people of all economic backgrounds because I do many retreats myself and you don't see people from all walks of life,
Mhm.
and I would love to open a retreat center where everyone is welcome regardless of ability to pay and that everyone gets the opportunity to just kind of take a step back from the busyness of life and kind of reconnect with who they are and why they're here, what their purpose is. So that's a secret dream.
That's a great dream. I could see that being extremely successful and impactful in the world.
Yeah,
All right. How
that's
about a personal mantra or motto that you live by?
well, it's, everything's going to be okay. I do
Yep.
live by
Yep.
that. And, I think one of the things that's been really helpful in my journey is we all live in a world of uncertainty, even though we try to pretend we don't. I
Mhm.
mean, the pandemic, I think, helped shine the light on that. None of us know what path exactly to choose and where it's going to end. But following my inner guide, I really do trust my gut instinct and that, inner voice that's really calming and kind of pushes you in the right direction. So I would say for me, it's trusting that all will work out the way it's supposed to. It might not be the way we had it planned, but you look back and say, gee, that happened for a reason.
Mhm.
And now we're in a much better place. So I trust that I may not have all the answers, but I will be guided on the right path. And
That's
that really brings a lot of peace, I would say.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, what piece of advice would you give to young men and women going into the profession of dentistry today?
Well, I would say, the dental profession is a great profession to be part of. There's so many aspects of the dental profession that you could, be impactful, as we were just mentioning, and also find a way to really shine. There's the clinical, I can't even believe all the clinical advancements
Yeah.
from the time I was in school. It's amazing, truly amazing. And more to come with AI, right? So there's a lot of excitement in terms of the technology in dentistry, and that's only going to be improving. I would love to see there be like equity, that we were able to reach a broader population, that we're able to somehow find a way to reach the 50-ish% of the population that doesn't get in to see a dentist. And find a way to do that. And it may not be in the confines of a practice, it may be in a school, a senior center, a camp, whatever it might be, but to be open to other ways of practicing dentistry that may be non-traditional, but will also be very both, lucrative, because I know people want to, have a strong business, but also impact people that they may not have otherwise impacted. So I think really like thinking big, and in a way that I think traditionally we probably haven't been able to as much in dentistry, but I think that's changing. I think the profession is certainly changing, the practice patterns are changing, and the technology is changing. So it really is a time of excitement to be in the field.
One of the things I always talk to Dean Thomas about is sending the students where they're needed, not where we were in downtown Boston, because you can't expect people that have limited income to drive all the way into Boston. And we've had patients, from upstate New Hampshire, upstate Vermont, Maine, as far away as Cape Cod, the tip of Cape Cod, come and drive 2 or 3 hours just to come for a dental appointment. And when you total all of that up, time and money to park and the time it takes to drive, it's a lot to ask of a patient to do. And I have felt really strongly that we could solve a lot of that problems if we could just send our students with a faculty member to where they're needed, start a small practice. Patients would flock all over the place if we put a practice in upstate New York or upstate New Hampshire, Maine, or Vermont, because they need it so badly. We can't get students to go to those places.
Exactly. And, we actually do have a AEGD program, and some of our DPH residents from Harvard, we have connections with 6 clinical sites in New Hampshire. And I would love to see us expand that, and even using teledentistry more, where I would love to see us use teledentistry like in the local library, in the local community center, in these very rural communities. Where do people gather? Find a way to connect them to a dentist through teledentistry, and then have that dentist be able to refer them to the nearest place where they could get their dental needs met. And I think that's going to be something we're going to see more and more of in the dental field, and it's much needed.
Absolutely. Now, do you use a lot of teledentistry instruction with your residents when you teach?
So currently we haven't been doing a lot of that, although there is a plan, and we put in a grant recently to actually the USDA, the US Department of Agriculture. They actually have some funding for telehealth and distance learning.
That's great. Well, I hope you guys get it.
Yeah, I hope so too, because we'll be able to provide the necessary equipment to these sites in New Hampshire to be able to do all of that.
That's great. So reflecting back and thinking about your 12-year-old self, what piece of advice would you give her?
Everything's going to be okay. I think that is such a tough age. I have a granddaughter coming up on 11 years old, and she's a lovely, like, I just adore this kid, and she's brilliant. She's gets all kinds of, accolades, but she's very humble. But she believes in herself. And she ran for student government. They call it character ed. And she got it. And she said, I got it because I believed in myself. And that just that's the key. She just had the confidence, not arrogance, but confidence. And it's more, I would say, confidence, trusting, like I said, everything will work out. Not like I'm so great. That wasn't it. It's like trusting that she had a voice and her voice mattered. And she had to do an in-person interview with a teacher in order to get this role. And I said, well, how did it go? She said, well, she couldn't tell me, but I think she liked my answers because of the way she looked. And then when she got it, she said, I got it because I believed in myself. And that, to teach young kids, that is, I think, so important. I wish I had it internally, but it wasn't getting that a lot externally at that age. And I think our kids need us to give them that confidence, not to be the, everyone gets the, gold medal,
Right.
but more like also learning from things that you don't get. So
Right.
if she didn't get that role, which would have easily been a possibility, what I would have said to her was, and I did say this, I have so much respect for you for trying,
Yeah.
putting yourself out there. And we do learn from failures. And I think as a society, we value success so much, but I don't know about you, but I've learned from my mistakes like tremendously. And that's how we learn. And so we often in coaching, we often talk about failing forward. You try something, you may not be successful, but you've learned a heck of a lot. And then you might try it again in a different way.
Right. Opportunities for growth. That's what I call them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, you learn from everything you do, and it may not have worked out the way you expected, but I'm not going to call it a failure. I'm going to call it an opportunity to grow.
I love that.
Yeah.
Every challenge is an opportunity in disguise.
That's right. Now, I want to tell you, I am so excited to hear you say that about your granddaughter. And I want you to know that I am sure that apples don't fall too far from trees. And she has watched you accomplish so much in your career that she has only taken that and run with it. And internally, she has gained strength, I have no doubt, because of what you've done.
Oh, thank you. I remember giving her this talk because she was afraid to read in front of the class. And I said, well, what are you afraid of? She said, what if I make a mistake? And I was like, well, everyone makes mistakes. And I told her, I said, if you went around the world and asked people what they're afraid of, a lot of people are afraid to talk in front of a group. And so I said, the next time you just feel your feet on the ground, and that voice that tells you you can't do it, you tell that voice to be quiet. And the voice that says, you can do it, you can do it. And so this was when she was, probably 7. And the fact that she internalized that and actually went for it, to me, that's the greatest gift I've ever received.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Well, Kathryn, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. You've given us a lot of nuggets to bring home and contribute to our toolbox and making us more confident. And definitely you have inspired the audience, I have no doubt. So thank you so much. If people wanted to reach out to you and just ask a question about what you did in your career, how can they reach you?
Yeah, so my personal email is Kathryn Hayes, my full name, kathrynhayes40@comcast.net. That's probably the easiest way to reach me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathryn, so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to the Women in Dentistry podcast with Dr. MJ Hanlon. If you like our show and want to know more about us, check out our website, thewomenindentistry.com, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Join us for our next episode as we bring you another amazing woman leading the way for the next generation.